Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. Azerbaijan had been warning for weeks that US and EU talks with Armenia would be destabilizing for the South Caucasus. Now those talks have ended with a huge pledge by Brussels, a $290 million financial aid package for Armenia. Notably absent from those talks were any of Armenia's neighbours, all of whom have warned faraway outside powers to tread carefully in a region trying to recover from decades of conflict.
This vision will be underpinned on the European Union side by a resilience and growth plan for Armenia, 270 million euros in grants over the next 4 years.
Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan held talks in Brussels with European Commission President von der Leyen and US Secretary of State Blinken, who added that Washington would be bolstering its economic support to $65 million this year. Armenia, traditionally an ally of Russia, has been moving rapidly towards the West, expressing desires to join the EU. Yerevan has publicly blamed Russia for a lack of support during its conflict with Azerbaijan. Baku won a stunning military victory in 2020, regaining control of the Karabakh region. Last year, Azerbaijan was able to expel the last separatists, re-establishing its full sovereignty over Karabakh. And to discuss Armenia's efforts to strengthen its ties with the West, joining me now from Milan is Eleonora Tafura Ambrosetti. She's a senior research fellow at the Russia, Caucasus and Central Asia Center at Institute for International Political Studies. And from Istanbul, Tarık Ozlu, a professor of international relations at Istanbul Aydın University. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, Eleonora, what do you make of the trilateral meeting between Armenia, the EU and US, which was held in Brussels on Friday? What are your key main takeaways?
So basically, this is an attempt on the part, especially of Brussels, to further integrate Armenia, especially economically. Armenia and the EU are already working on the harmonization and the further liberalization of trade in their economy. So this is just one step in a longer process. Today was a good day, I think, for this integration process, because a resilience and growth plan was signed for Armenia, and this is basically further EU assistance to Armenia's economy, especially for small and medium enterprises, and for infrastructural plans. So this is mainly the message that the EU wants to send to Armenia. We want to invest in your economy and well-being.
So, Tarık, what do you make of this financial aid package by the European Union? I mean, the question is, why have both the US and EU all of a sudden decided to support Armenia's economy?
I think there is nothing wrong with the European Union deciding to give financial aid to Armenia, but it would have been much more perfect and geopolitically wise strategy if the European Union and the United States had included Georgia and Azerbaijan to this aid packages, because this Southern Caucasus region consists of 3 important countries. They all actually try to have good relations with the European Union, but the European Union, being a geopolitical actor, should not turn its face to the geopolitical realities on the ground. So we all know the story that the European Union has been in negative terms with the Russian Federation. The United States is waging a proxy war against Russia through Ukraine. And we also know that Armenia is feeling quite disappointed by the Russian political movements in the latest Armenian-Azerbaijani conflicts. So if you take into consideration all these geopolitical factors, we can come to the conclusion that this can be seen as an attempt on the part of Western international community to draw Armenia further closer to the West in such a way to give a lesson to Russia or other countries in the region which are not happy with the Western global position.
So, Eleonora, how much of this interest by the West in the South Caucasus factors in the vast energy resources in the region, especially after Russia's attack on Ukraine?
So first of all, I think I don't necessarily agree with the explanation that there is a sort of preferential treatment to Armenia, because for Georgia there is already an association agreement with the EU, and with Azerbaijan the EU has established a quite fruitful relationship. Armenia is simply the poorest country in the South Caucasus, so I think it's also a matter of the needs of the Armenian economy. In the case of considering the wider geopolitical situation, I think it's really important for the EU to help stabilize the neighborhood, especially the South Caucasus, because the EU needs stability, needs peace in order to have also a fruitful relationship with Baku, which is basically establishing itself as one of very important source for gas and oil for the EU.
So, Tarek, what do you think? Is this latest move also aimed at offsetting Armenia's possible economic losses in case it leaves the Eurasian Economic Union, which is, we all know, dominated by Russia?
I need to respond to this comment given by Eleonora in some way. Let me underline the point that the picture is very important. The picture itself speaks volumes. And Blinken siding with von der Leyen, siding with the Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan, coming together in the capital city of the European Union and giving a message to the international audience that the West is fully behind Armenia. So this is quite an important geopolitical signaling. We should not underestimate its impact. And we should not also forget the fact that Russians, Azerbaijanis, and Turkish authorities have voiced somehow critical stances against this particular development on the ground. So we should not forget the fact that neither Azerbaijanis, nor Russians, nor Turks feel quite happy with this growing rapprochement between the West, the larger West, I mean, and Armenia. They all intend to interpret this development from a geopolitical perspective. This also needs to be taken into account. Otherwise, as I told you before, there is nothing wrong for the European Union to intensify its financial economic cooperation with the countries in the region, Armenia being a very important part of it.
But Tarek, the question is, like, would it be easy for Armenia to decouple from Russia both economically and militarily?
I don't think so. It's going to be quite easy because Russian troops are already deployed in Armenian territories. Russian Federation is protecting Armenian borders, and Russia has also invested a lot in Armenian economy. But also we know that Russia is not happy with the geopolitical tag Armenian government has been taking on. So this is important. And giving the European Union giving 300 million euros to Armenia for a period of 4 years, 5 years, wouldn't make a great impact on Armenia's economy. It wouldn't have a great magical solution to Armenia's economic problems. The best solution to Armenia's economic problems will go through rapprochement among the countries in the region.
So, Eleonora, Azerbaijan had criticized the meeting before it was held, saying the talks wouldn't be transparent and undermines confidence-building measures in the region, in the South Caucasus. What will Azerbaijan do in response to these talks, you think?
Well, first of all, let me, because it's a very important point to stress. I'm not claiming the meeting doesn't have a geopolitical value, because it does have it. I'm just claiming this is not a turning point. This is not something that happened out of the blue. This is just the result of a long process that has been going on even after the Sargsyan, the past prime minister in Armenia, decided to sign the membership with the Eurasian Economic Union instead of signing the association agreement with the EU. Since then, there has been a consistent consistent effort on the part of the Armenian government to further integrate with the EU, despite the fact that Armenia is economically and politically dependent on Russia. And I think this is just one episode in this saga, let's say. So as for your question, I think Azerbaijan is also interested in having a good relationship with the EU, especially. And I think the discontent that the Azerbaijani officials have voiced will not result in many concrete steps. It would just be, you know, like a reasonable, if you allow me say that, signs of discontent. But the situation is already tense on the ground. I don't think this will cause more friction.
So Ankara also weighed in on the talks. I just want to bring up what Türkiye's foreign ministry released on X before the meeting. It said, in this context, it is our responsibility to underline clearly that the trilateral meeting between Armenia, the EU and the USA on 5th of April will undermine the neutral approach that should be the basis for the solution of the complex problems of the region. So Tarek, what do you make of Ankara's stance? I mean, is the region poised for further instability?
I think this statement issued by Turkish Foreign Ministry reveals what I have already mentioned in my previous answers to your questions. So Ankara interprets this latest development from a geopolitical perspective. We should not forget the fact that on the heels of this latest summit meeting between Armenian, American and European leaders, French Minister of Defense paid a visit to Armenia in recent months and signaling that France would intensify its military and defense cooperation with Armenia. This is something important. We should not underline the importance of this strategic development. Russia is being perceived as a kind of challenge, not only alongside the fault line in Ukraine, but also in the Caucasian region. And the Western international community is somehow trying to bring into existence a kind of anti-Russian coalition.
Yes.
And this is very clear. This is very clear. Otherwise, as I told you before, the European Union offering aid and financial packages to the countries in the region and asking them to improve their economic cooperation among each other, making the region a part of the EU family of nations, will be perfect. No one will argue against that.
So, Eleanor, just a few months ago, as Tarek mentioned, France has also deployed military vehicles to Armenia. Very quick answer for this. Some analysts say Armenia's strategy is to fully embrace the West and to remove Russian influence. But does Armenia risk becoming too reliant on the West, and could it fall into a similar fate where Western support is conditional and sometimes temporary, as Ukraine is finding out now?
Well, I believe Armenia is quite aware of the fact that the EU is not a very strong security actor the same way Russia is. So I think there would be a real risk for Armenia if it decided to turn its back to Russia. And I don't think it's possible because also energetically Armenia is fully dependent on Russia. But there is a big frustration in the country because of the lack of assistance or perceived lack of assistance by Russia in 2020 and 2023. So I think the Pashinyan government is having a very bad moment with the Kremlin, and it reflects also the general mood in the country.
All right, Eleonora and Tarek, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.